Welcome to Grog Talk.
Welcome.
Episode 13, if I recall. This is it could be lucky or unlucky.
We shouldn't skip it.
Well, go to 14. I almost did because I forgot what episode. Because we took a quick hiatus, took a couple weeks off. So some people on the podcast would have not only noticed 1 week, but the live stream was a couple weeks. For our multi-list viewers out there, we had some comments, disappointment, but yeah, we did have some folks who were very, very happy. We did get a comment.
We did.
Yeah.
Some people were happy we took a hiatus, is my understanding too. Is that right?
That's right. Are you coming back? Why did you? Are you coming back? You don't need to come back. That's
Right.
fine. We're good with that. See, we're live now, and yeah, I'm looking for the
comment. Yeah, you know things are going well when you're looking for quote the comment.
Well, it's interesting because I was looking for because I thought we had it there, but it was a good comment. They said after 15 minutes, I'm hooked.
Really?
That's what they said. So I thought that was pretty good.
That's very nice of them.
If they are, they're being completely hidden. So.
That was me.
Oh well.
No.
That's now I'm disappointed, but
no, it's not.
I don't know where it is. So anyhow, I thought that was really nice that someone would take time to tell us how good we're doing. I think that's pretty awesome. So, what are we going to talk about today? Do you recall what we're going to talk about today?
My understanding is we're going to be talking about adventuring at different levels,
Mm-hmm.
some of the differences that you have, other than the obvious difference that you have different levels.
Yeah.
And also different styles of game, high fantasy, low fantasy. There's so many different genres. It's like, heavy metal with all these different genres.
Oh yes,
now.
I know this is a kind of a pet peeve of yours.
Is it?
Well, because the nuances. I thought not a pet peeve. We talked about that. The different why is there really multiple versions of heavy metal, thrash metal, right? That was the old days.
Confusing.
Doom metal, new metal, hardcore metal.
Can't we just all get along? And then, so we'll talk about the differences between different styles of games, high fantasy, low fantasy.
Yep. All right. So, let's do a quick word of recall episode. And you're starting up a one shot. Some of our listeners were concerned. They had we're going to have an intervention with you because you hadn't been playing. You hadn't started the game. So,
what would that be like? A D&D intervention?
That's right.
Because usually, don't you have to have an intervention when they're playing too much?
Right.
You've got to stop.
That's
the family members.
Right. Well, we were stopping you from becoming what you were before. You had your hiatus for 29 years, and you were slipping back into those bad habits. You're actually enlightened now.
That could happen at any time. I could go into another 29-year hibernation.
Right. And that would be, so that's the intervention.
I'd be turning on like 80.
Yeah, it's not sobriety, it's anti-sobriety.
That's true, because, when I was 8, by the time I'm 80, I might not be able to play anymore.
Well, and that's what we're worried about. We don't want that to happen where you're...
You guys are good friends.
So they were concerned. So you're moving to one shots now to prepare for GrogCon? Is that the thought?
An explanation of what's going on is in order?
Yes, yeah.
I feel like this is the intervention.
Well, it's part of it,
Be sure to ask Dan about...
well, we should mention the Grog line, right?
Well,
we'll see if people are going to call, because if you call 407-476-6779, you can intervene in Dan's behalf.
If you want to know what the heck's going on with me, you got to call.
That's
I'm not talking until somebody calls.
Okay.
Then you'll find out.
All right,
and let me tell you, there's a lot to find out. What I would tell you would blow your mind.
Oh, no. Oh.
But it is true, I am doing a one-shot. Well, considering the fact that the phone will not ring, I'll go ahead and I'll just start talking. So, I think running a campaign is very time-consuming. I think there's probably a high burnout rate for DMs, don't you think?
Yes.
And you answered that so quickly.
Oh, no. not.
What do you want to talk about?
That's right.
You get something better. So, I don't know. I'm liking the idea of some one-shots periodically. I think the nice thing about that is that players are not going to be invested in their character. Your character dies. Who cares? Big deal. It was just a piece of paper. And the nice thing about the one-shot is that you get to jump around and do different levels. We'll be talking about different levels.
Right, tiers of play.
Yep.
That's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yep. You get to do different tiers of play. And the only difficulty with one-shots, I think, is finding adventures that are suitable length. We should have a pet peeve. We should have, kind of like what Festivus had or something. We should have some sort of
airing of the grievances.
Exactly. Why do we always have? I think we need to change the tone of this thing. So.
Well, we did. So we did. We were going to trash 1E. Remember, that was you wanted to do 2 weeks ago. We were saying how terrible 1E was. And
before my recent mini hibernation.
That's right.
I think that we should have area grievances. So, because one of my pet peeves is that adventures are oftentimes, I think, too long.
Yeah.
I open up an adventure, I see 120 rooms. We've talked about this before. That's great if I'm playing every day, but if I'm playing once every 2 weeks and I see 120, this. It takes a group. It's an evening is going through 10 rooms. Yeah. I don't know what the average is, but
10,
it seems like
10 would be excessive. It's usually 5 or 6.
Right. So if you see, 100 rooms, you're not going to be able to be done with it. And I see this happen in conventions a lot of times too, where people run these adventures, these modules that I know going in because I'm somewhat familiar with them, have a massive amount of rooms. So one of the nice things about the one-shot, though, or one of the difficult things, is then finding suitable adventures. So I'm going to be running something from Dragon Magazine because those are quote mini modules, mini adventures.
Yeah, and I thanks to one of our folks, I scored a bunch of Dragon magazines, so you can peruse some of them too.
Yeah, you got to those before I did.
See, there's stuff down here and down here.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Ooh, sorry.
Those are the extra ones.
I almost took off the...
Those are some of the prizes for our June tournament. We're having a June tournament as well, so...
I bought one of these Harn. I bought one of the Harn modules because I was always
So we're looking at Dragon.
Curious about
Which number are you looking at?
I really shouldn't touch it. It's about to fall apart.
That's okay.
70... Oh, you know what's in 78?
Yeah, I know exactly what's in 78.
What's in 78?
Citadel by the Sea.
Citadel by the Sea.
That's why when you ran, I'm like, okay, I'll just be quiet for a while because I knew.
We were way too nice to you guys. We let you guys leave. We let you leave.
You should
have left. That should have been it.
Yeah, there's
Cromar.
There's the main bad guy. And Cromar's there too.
Cromar's there too. Oh yeah, Cromar's. Yeah, he's being held there. Yeah, Citadel by the Sea.
It's a great module.
Yeah, that was a good adventure. That was fun.
That may be one of our suggestions. Citadel by the Sea.
Oh man, I'll let that be the. Can I make that my suggestion?
That's very good. That's good.
Perfect. So what I love about your place here is you just turn around and grab, and something cool's coming out.
And you touch 3rd edition. I'm just saying.
It burns. It burns. There's a lot of good stuff. Yeah, you should do, people do now, they call them shelfies. Are you familiar with the phrase shelfie?
No, I'm not.
I think there's a lot of wargamers do that now. A shelfie is you take a picture of your shelf and you post it online.
Oh, okay.
It's how cool. And this is,
It's a decent amount. Some of the stuff is, it's original. That's the thing. They are.
Oh yeah, you can tell. You have to go back here.
Yeah, but so that's kind of why I thought about talking about tiers of play because, if you move towards, as opposed from a traditional campaign, when you start at level 1, and you go to whatever level most campaigns die. They normally don't have a die of natural causes. They don't die. They don't ever killed off. They die of natural causes, either disinterest or there's typically not a total party kill, except in Dan's game. But typically it's people just peter out. It's just either people start playing, the DM burns out, people are just, or 2 or 3 sessions go by where no one plays, and all of a sudden they go, oh, we should probably start this over again.
And you have the opposite problem.
I do have.
It keeps growing.
I do have the opposite problem. No one leaves. Yeah, we're at 12 players again. 12. It's crazy.
That's with another group forming.
Yeah, with another group. Yes.
They just doubled up.
Hold on.
They just joined the other group too. So.
Yeah, we have 12. And so and that's one of the things I am thinking about is at some point you got to end the thing because and that's first thing you got to talk about your expectations with your players because some of them may be like, we want to keep playing to we're level 50 and I'm not interested in that. So there'll be a natural end, but I don't know when it's going to be.
But I think you want to have that conversation with your party, which is how do you want this to end? Because I think there may be some people that like, yeah, we wanted to end like, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, right? Or there may be others that wanted to end where they retire.
Well, we have an epic, there on the campaign I'm running, there is a time clock, basically, for some cataclysmic event. So there could be a natural ending there, and there'll be some epic things. But I know some of them would want to keep playing because, again, that's back to what we were talking about a number of. It's this nostalgia that we may or may have not had, which is this idea of, why can't we be like Elminster and Tensor or one of these folk, these games that we've heard about that they've run till, level 20, level 18, some epic level of play. And the problem is, you just if you play normally, without Monty Hall or this, that, and you played every week, it would take 5 years, my guess, to get to that highest level every week, assuming no one died, because we've seen, just in our role playing here, experience points are kind of hard to come by. And when you've looked at some epic modules like Tumahars, like this or that, yeah, they give out lots of gold, but you need lots of experience to go up levels. Magic user needs 375,000 experience points once they get past 12th or 13th level.
Yeah.
And you have a party of 5, you're talking about 1 million experience points before they can go up a level.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question about higher level play. Because what level are the characters in your group at now, roughly?
So they float between 6th and 8th level.
Okay.
So to me, they're crossing tiers, and we can go, but what's your question?
So do you find, when, I'm more familiar with the lower level.
Right.
I mean, it's been, my character made pretty high level. I think my illusionist character back in the day, my friend Edward, he remembers my life better than I do. He tells me that my illusionist made it to around 12th level or something like that. But certainly more recently, I'm familiar with low-level play, is when you reach a mid-range, is it less likely there's going to be a TPK because if you're starting to take damage, you can get out of there? Yeah. So, my understanding, my experience with the lower level is, a single blow or 2 and it's over. So is it easier to avoid a TPK?
Right. Yes, absolutely. Unless, unless the Dungeon Master is really looking for that and sets up, TPK comes, usually it's a series of misfortunate events, right? That that the players have made a choice and the Dungeon Master has decided that there is no recourse for it. So when we had the thing in your game, you made the decision that the illusionist at the end, 14th level,
not written by me.
Right. The old not written by me. Yeah. Almost as bad as I'm just playing my character. But but that's how campaigns die, right? It's the same thing. It's when the game ends when the Dungeon Master decides it's going to end. And there's 2 ways. Either you're burnt out or this is what would happen. The module says, or I've written this, that if the players do this and that, this is what's going to happen, and you're not going to change your mind. You're going to let the chips fall where they may.
Well, the unfortunate thing on that one, is so, not that people really care that much about this, but there was a bad die roll for you guys, of course, too, because I think the illusionist did a color spray. I think a high-level illusionist, if the high-level illusionist doesn't get the party on that first round, say that surprise round or whatever, right, the illusionist is going to be in some trouble, because the illusionist, even at 14th level, doesn't have that many hit points. And if you got 6 characters, it rolled, I think, a 6 on the roll for how many players were affected by the color spray.
And we were damaged, but again, we had done some kind of dumb things. Some players killed themselves because they touched the artifact, and there was some fighting. So again, a series of things.
And sort of forgot about the illusion, I think. Right. Sort of forgot about the illusionist who had sent you in there, right? I mean, at the beginning.
Well,
I was there at the beginning.
Well, there was a discussion about go getting it, but we thought it was a trap that didn't really have some power behind it, like it was an old trap that was on there. So again, a bunch of things had to happen in order for that TPK to happen.
And we should mention, most of our viewers probably know this, but it was something I didn't know when I started playing again. TPK, referring to total party kill.
Total party, that's right. When every player character, and that's the beauty of D&D. The game doesn't have to end. You can still keep all your setting. It's really a TPK when you retire. It's the same thing. The party is dead because the characters have retired or moved on, and you can still stay in the world that you've created. I don't think I would change the world because I've put time into it, but if the players retired, there was the epic battle, and some survived, some didn't, they would, part of the, I think the old school way is that these characters would retire. That's baked in the rules.
Right.
That you get land, you get buildings, and then you build new characters. And now these player characters are part of the world. And to answer your question, I think it's there's less resources for players to get out of a jam. Whereas like when we played Vic's game back in December, my pre-rolled character had teleport. So if the only reason there'd be a TPK is if I decided not to escape, I could have pulled the ripcord at any point and teleported away. In fact, I think I did at some point. So
yeah, you left my character behind.
Yeah, something like that.
Enslaved in the
yeah, but we didn't have a TPK.
Right.
That was the goal. We weren't going to give Vic the satisfaction of wiping us all out.
That's our standard.
That's right.
Yeah, just to be clear, we're talking about Vic Dorso from he's from Minneapolis, and so yeah, that's the standard in a Vic. When you go into a Vic game, your standard is not to like kill the baddie, get the treasure. It's just not to die. As a matter of fact, you might as well just not play.
Well, that's
just enter, just put one foot in the dungeon and then step out.
Yeah, because you
declare victory.
It's what is that? It's any kind of fear challenge. You got to do enough to that people won't say you're a coward. But the whole goal is looking for the exit the whole time. So tier play. I kind of look at it as the modules. When you bought pre-gen modules, if you look behind you, we're gonna kind of back up here. Yeah. So let's grab a few of these.
Oh yeah.
So you got different tiers of play here.
Oh, look at this. Is this Molde right there?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, look at that.
So I don't have one of everything yet. So you start with beginning levels. Here you go, sir.
Nice.
So for me, tier 1 is typically 1 to 3. Well, that's the highest. That's one of the higher tiers. But yep, so your Village of Hamlet, your Curse of the Reptile God, Keep on the Borderlands, which is a basic game. Those are from are 1 to 3, and those are typically considered tier 1. Tier 2 is typically 4 to 7. So all the Slaver series, A1 through A4, and Dan's showing A4 out on the screen. And I think I1 is also one. 4 to 7. And this is where, that's kind of mid-level, or kind of intermediate. Then mid-level is 8 to 12. And 8 to 12 would be, the Giant series is 8 to 12. G1, G2, G3, I don't have that here with me. And then typically the highest level that I think most of the purchase modules, at least back in the original, was 10 to 14, like Vault of the Drow, D3, and Q1, which was Queen of the Demon Web Hips. And then there's, of course, beyond that, which is kind of the fifth tier, which is the epic tier. Some call it epic play, because when you look in the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, clearly the experience tables go level 20 and above. So I'm sure there are campaigns. I don't think we ever went legitimately from 1 to 15 or 20. I think most of the time you got to the third tier of 8 to 12 or something like that, and then some cataclysmic event happened, and then you kind of moved on to another thing. So the like you said, most people are very familiar with 1 to 3. So what are the characteristics when you think of 1 to 3 tier? What's some of the features of a tier 1 play? What do you like about tier 1 play, and what are the disadvantages from your perspective?
Well, I like tier 1 through 3, level 1 through 3, quite well. It's my favorite. I think there's a lot of players who don't like it, and so I can comment on why I think players don't like it. I like level 1 to 3 because I think the danger really increases for the characters, which is why I asked you about the possibility of a total party kill at higher levels. I like the idea that you've got to be very worried about a goblin or 2 goblins, as we certainly, as you might recall from Adventures of Glade.
And that's right, Pixie.
Pixie and Glade. Oh,
is that the line?
No, it's an alarm. Why is my alarm going off? I know we get so excited. That's awful, isn't it? No, my phone was going off.
I thought that was the grog line.
The grog line. I should have just pretended it was and picked it up. I missed an opportunity. I'm not fast enough. Not quick enough.
We're going to have to do that next time. We're just going to have to set our alarm. We're going to have to call
Right. Hello, grog line. Yeah, yes, hello. Yes. Gygax.
Hello.
Is that
hello.
you? Yes.
Have on the phone. Hold on. Where did James go?
Yes,
hello. I'm Luke Gygax. Exactly.
Yes, Mr. Colwell, thank you. You're a big fan, are you? No, I'm sorry. We're not available to be on your show next week. I'm sorry. We're too busy.
Too busy.
So I like level 1 through 3 a lot. Like I said, because of the risk involved. You talked about the resources in prior podcasts about how, do I have enough resources? And you can't just buy everything you want. You've got to make choices, and that's sort of how I remember first edition. I think once it gets higher level, it loses that. I think what players don't like typically about the lower level, though, is, there's a lot of players who they get a little tired of having to always worry about a goblin or two and possibly dying. Mm-hmm. They get attached to their characters. Even if they've only had their characters for a session or 2 sessions, they are attached to the character, and they don't like that idea that it's very easy for the character to die. So I think that's, that's the pros and cons of low level. And particularly in first edition, for Magic users in particular, it's really tough because not only do you have very few hit points. I mean, if you roll hit points at first level, you could have very low. I mean, you could be a fighter with just a couple hit points.
You technically could be a fighter with 1 hit point.
You could, yeah, if you don't have a con bonus.
Or a ranger with 3 hit points.
That's right. I think we had a ranger with 3 hit points.
He died horribly.
Right. And so I think it's a little tough to have so few hit points. And if you're a Magic user, not only do you have very few hit points, I mean, best case scenario, you probably have 4. I mean, you probably don't have a con bonus as a Magic user. Right. And then you have very few spells, right? A Magic user at first level gets, 1 spell per day?
Yeah.
And they get 3 spells in their spell book, right? Or 4 if you count Read Magic. So they have 4 spells and only 1 per day. They're not doing a lot. I mean, at first level, the Magic user is typically standing outside of the melee. They're going to do maybe, if they're lucky, they have magic missiles. Right.
As we've shown, they may get push as their offensive spell.
That's right. You're supposed to roll. And even if you do roll it, I think, and I know there's some debate about this, and I recall the rules are not all that clear on that, as whether then you're supposed to roll even for those first ones or not, right? But so you may be unable to learn magic missile and never have it.
That's right. You roll for sleep and you can't have it.
And so you can't have it. And so I think that's tough. And thieves at low level. All of a sudden, I'm starting to come up with a lot of them. They're starting to roll in now. Thieves at low level are horrible because the percentage chance of doing anything, I mean, the percentage chance of actually finding a trap is so low. Right. You just assume that they're not going to find the trap, and that's the problem too. Is if you have a dungeon laden with traps at low level, that can be really deadly. And I don't think that's a lot of fun. I would keep out a lot of traps at low level, I got to tell you. But so that's what I think. Those are pros and cons that I see.
Yeah, and I think I almost split up Tier 1 into first level play, the first adventure, and then once they made it to second level, because the survivability, I think, I don't know if it's exponential, but it certainly increases dramatically once you've gone from first to second level. Yeah. A fighter with 10 hit points at second level or 12 hit points is way more sturdy than a fighter with 5 hit points. Let's say you roll bad, you have 4 hit points, and you have a con bonus, you have 5 hit points. Any blow can take you down, in theory. Whereas once you get over the 10 hit point threshold, you can take 2 shots. That ability to absorb more damage. So for me, that first adventure is challenging. We're in the game I'm playing in. Someone died, and again, he would have died regardless of the tier, because he failed his saving throw versus poison. But combat is extremely deadly because you don't have that many hit points. 1 hit point could take you, 1 hit could take you down. So getting through the first adventure and getting enough experience points to become second level is a huge thing. But you can create games in Tier 1 that are very gritty. They're very real, quote unquote realistic, open air quotes. Where food is important. and light is important, and breathing is important. All these realistic things. It can be a very low level, low magic. It's easy to control the encounters, at least from a power level, because one of the challenges with all games, and that's why I think editions come out, is that you have to increase the level of challenge, which is, when you're going back to your question about TPK, it's hard to do a TPK in some ways, but it can be very easy to do a TPK at higher levels because you want to challenge your players. And you set up the encounter before you know the situation that the players are in. So if I put a dragon here, which I think, oh, this will be a challenge, but they'll have no problem because they have fireball, they have this, they have that, they have weapons, attacks. Well, you're assuming they're fully at hit points, they're not being chased by something else. They're going to attack optimally. Well, when you put that all together, there's that situation. The party runs into a room, they're all weakened because they're being chased by something else, and they get blasted by the breath weapon of the dragon, and now they're all dead, or they're pretty close to being dead. And again, that's why I think a TPK is a dungeon master decision, at least as far as I'm going to allow it to happen. Not that it's going to happen, but I'm going to allow it to happen. You can see, like we were talking about in your game or any game, this dragon scenario, the dragon's sitting there, it's going to be there. They fought something else, and now they're running towards that. At some point, you make the decision, am I going to allow this to happen? And I would say yes, because that's what should happen. But some players, or I'm going to say yes, but if some survive, then I'm not just going to have the goblins or orcs that are chasing them kill them. They'll be captured. So Tier 1 is a lot easier you can throw a lot of monsters. You can have bad guys that hopefully they realize they shouldn't attack, especially older players or players that have played a while. If you show them a vampire, like the other adventure, hopefully people, if they're first level, realize, oh, they're way beyond our part. If you want to introduce the big bad guy and have him say something nefarious but then escape, you don't have to worry about the players trying to attack them because they would hopefully realize they're way past their thing. So, the Tier 1 is and it's also interesting. I think the downside to it is people don't know their character yet. At least in first edition, the way Dan and I look at character development is you roll the dice, you get stats, you figure out what the class is, and then you figure out what your backstory and your character is as you play the game. You don't come up with this huge backstory of who you are and everything else, and then, if you were that interesting, why are you adventuring? The idea is you become interesting. Your story is being written as you do it. So the characters tend to be very generic, and it's kind of like the first season of any good show. They're still trying to figure each other out.
It's the pilot.
It's the pilot, yeah. And you don't get that really. There's no stories behind it either. There's nothing epic about them.
We're not sure there's going to be another episode.
Right.
I'll do a big backstory when I know that we've been picked up for another season.
Right. And some of the people, they may not survive. Is this guy red? Who's the red shirt in this group? Someone's going to be. If you got a first edition game, someone's going to die.
Oh, is it, the old saying? If you don't know who the red shirt is, it's you.
That's right. Look left and right. If you don't see a red shirt, you're the red shirt. So, Tier 1 is, I prefer Tier 1 because there's a lot more choices. You can do a lot of things. But for some player characters, the classes, they don't get to do a lot of things because they're just so inadequate.
Not surprisingly, some players don't like sucking.
Right.
And you pretty much suck at first level.
Fighter is, Ranger is the, if you want to enjoy your first tier experience, you have to be a Ranger.
If you roll, but you need to roll more than 3 hit points.
Right. Yeah. And now, I would invoke the Gygax Rule in Player's Handbook, which says, your character should have at least 215. So.
Well, right. I believe that was saying was Gygax saying you're in trouble if you don't? Or is he saying you need is he just sort of like a warning?
Yeah, well, I think, this, and again, it's that whole thing we talked about when we were rolling. Furthermore, it's usually essential to the character's survival to be exceptional with a rating of 15 and above in no fewer than 2 ability characteristics. Yeah. So, I think, and that's a style of play too, which we'll talk about, which is, let the dice roll where they may. I don't have a problem with it, but I hope the Dungeon Master then is adjusting. If you're going to have average characters, then you have to have average modules. And that's where I think, going back to my idea of additions, what happens is if players try to optimize and then they're super powerful, then you have to put more powerful creatures. Then players get frustrated. Then they want new abilities. And so in order to sell more books, the game comes out with more abilities, like Unearthed Arcana came out, and the whole specialization is very cool for players, but it changes the dynamic of the monsters. An orc, which used to be, you probably need 2 hits to kill it. Now, one round, you're wiping one out. So the power level increases. The fighter, that's why when you ask me, we've got 7th level fighters, but they attack twice per round. In first edition, pre-Unearthed Arcana, you have to be like 13th level to do that. To get two attacks per round.
Yeah.
So really they're 7th level, but they're more like 9th or 10th level plus, because they attack twice per round. And once you get above 9th level, you're not getting a lot of hit points. You're only getting 3 hit points per round. You're not rolling the dice anymore. So from a fighter perspective, a 9th level fighter who attacks 3 per 2, or a 7th level fighter who attacks 2 per round because he's specialized in a weapon, I'd rather be the 7th level fighter who attacks twice per round, because that 10 more hit points is not going to make a whole bunch of difference and a little bit better attack matrix. So anyway, so to me, those are, that's what makes Tier 1 interesting, is that you can control a lot of things. But same thing, you can control the environment, there's a lot more cool things you can throw at it. You can have really powerful magic that's powerful, and the players can experience it, but you have to be very careful. Then you have the second tier, which is your 4 through 7, which is, if you buy modules from back in the day, the vast majority of the modules were written from 4 through 7. The Slaver series, the I series, C series, they're all, I think they even mean I is intermediate. I forgot what A, I think they had definitions, but we have Dwellers of the Forbidden City, so this is 4 through 7. So what are the things that you recall from the advantages of mid-tier? What sort of low mid-tier?
Well, so one of the advantages is you now have a much greater range of monsters that you can go up against. So, I think one of the challenges, so I said to you, all right, James, I want you to write an adventure level 1 to 3, a homebrew adventure. You're going to have, if you open up the monster manual, you're talking what, orcs, hobgoblins, it's going to be pretty limited.
Right.
And a lot of the, quote, cooler monsters you may not be able to use. And so once you start hitting levels 4 through 7 in that range, I think it really opens up a lot more possibilities for the Dungeon Master to include more interesting monsters, the players to encounter them. I think, going back to the spell issue, the spells become a lot nicer. Not only are you using more spells per day, but you've got more choices. And so spell casting, I think, it becomes, it's tough to be a first level cleric. I mean, the nice thing about a first level cleric, I know I'm going back to lower level, but is that you get spell bonuses. And I think that's one of the beasts a lot of people have, is that in first edition, I don't know how it works in other editions, but the magic user didn't get spell bonuses for high intelligence, whereas a cleric gets a spell bonus for wisdom. And druids are fantastic, because druids, I believe, it was unclear whether or not druids got a spell bonus, and I believe, I don't know if it was in an errata or a sage advice or wherever, it was clarified that druids do get the wisdom spell.
They're clerics, and I've always ruled it that way.
Right, and I think that my understanding is that's the way it is supposed to be. And druids get a nice amount of spells, don't they? They have 2 at first level.
They accelerate much faster. In the spell acquisition, because again, in the first edition rules, they're only supposed to go to level 14. So they went up faster. But their first level spells are technically not that great, but they do get 2 of them. And if they had their wisdom bonus, they could have 4 first level spells. And the bad part is they can't cure at first level.
Right,
but second level they can.
And that's right, and that's 4 spells per day, and they can, of course, like a cleric, can choose any spell they want. Unlike a magic user who's really limited, it's just what's in your spell book, what you rolled, and then it's just 1 and no per day and no intelligence bonus. So the nice thing about levels 4 through 7, particularly if you are a magic user, is that you now are really starting to become more powerful. And I think that was the idea, wasn't it? That magic users are going to start out really weak, but then ultimately you're going to become the most powerful.
But that's how it was. Yeah.
Is that right? And has that been your experience when magic users hit that level 4 and higher? Do they all of a sudden now start becoming much more of a force in the party than at low level?
I think yes. If you have a low-level magic user who has a powerful spell, like Sleep. Sleep is the most powerful spell for low-tier play. It's a game changer. Just like turning undead. Those are the two things that, and that's one of the big challenges when you write an encounter. And you look at Keeper Along the Borderlands, right? You ran that when it was your first thing coming back. There's 20 orcs, there's 30 goblins, if they all attack at the same time, they would kill everyone. Well, the only way you can survive that is if you use a sleep spell. So if the magic user has a sleep spell, then they're basically this artillery that kind of sits in the back, and everyone kind of looks, is this the time we're going to use sleep? And they deploy their nuclear bomb, and then they drop that bomb, and then they go, oh, I guess we're going to have to rest, or we're going to have to be very careful. So 5th level magic user is the magic. That's the golden time, because then they can acquire 3rd level spells. And now they have Fireball, potentially. They have Lightning Bolt. They have Slow. They have Haste. Those are, that goes from, so a fighter, you're fighting 10 gnolls, which are 2 hit dice. They have 10 hit points, plus or minus. You have a good fighter. He's 5th level. It will take him 15 rounds, probably plus or minus, to wade through these ones, assuming he survives. A 5th level magic user kills them all with 1 fireball.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Because 5 hit, if he rolls average, that's 17.5, or if he rolls a little bit higher, 20. Even if they save, they're all dead.
Yeah, so at GaryCon, I like to play clerics, and I played a cleric, and it was I was a fairly high level cleric, and so I wasn't familiar with the spells. I've sort of, when I first started playing again, I'd go to these conventions, and I had to play a spellcaster that I wasn't familiar with, the higher level spells. I was very nervous about it because you got to quickly read the spells, and now I'm not so concerned about it. I just sort of, I'm just like, whatever, let me read up on these.
Well, apparently, because when you played on ours, you're not too concerned about the spells. That's right. You just kind of pick random ones, which is cool.
Oh, yeah, when I ran a cleric. That's true. When I did play a cleric, I decided to randomly roll what I was going to. Well, I enjoy making, so, you joke about the push spell. I enjoy, I don't know if you're familiar with, but I can figure out sort of, I guess I push stuff, right? I mean, magically push stuff. I don't know, can I push somebody off a cliff with it?
No.
Oh. That stinks.
Yeah. Again, we're not going to trash first edition.
I'm
looking it up. Go ahead, keep going.
I like trying to figure out interesting ways to use spells.
This is a 1st level spell. So Sleep is a 1st level spell. You can knock out and then slaughter an ogre, potentially, 50-50 chance, or a bugbear, or 16 kobolds up to that.
Yeah, and there's no save, right? It's all based upon the level of the victim, is how many you can affect, but there's no save.
Here's what push does. Upon pronouncing the syllables of the spell, the magic user causes invisible force to strike against whatever object that he or she is pointing at. The force of the push is not great, being 1 foot-pound per level of the magic user casting the spell. But it can move small objects up to 1, basically 10 feet in the direction away from the caster. That's what it can do.
So I'm I'm like a guy I would work at a carnival, and I'd be like, behold, see this pencil.
Yes.
And the pencil would roll.
Yes.
And I'm not touching it. Yeah, that's terrible.
Right. So an example, the latter is causing a creature to lose its balance. But you in order to do that, a 1st level character can effectively push a creature weighing more than 50, cannot effectively push a creature weighing more than 50 pounds.
So I need like a halfling child?
Right, a halfling zygote. It's not even a child, it's pre-born.
So that I could push off of a cliff?
Right, if it was standing literally at the edge of the cliff.
Right, like teetering.
Right, and there's a saving throw.
And then it fails a saving throw, then it goes over.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have Sleep, which can knock out for 5 minutes, and then you have Push, which is like
It's like worse than can I have a cantrip instead?
Well, there's mending.
It's worse than a cantrip.
That's right.
Mending.
There's a few horrible things. So.
Yeah, but you know what's great about mending is mending. If you're gonna have the mending spell, this isn't this screaming out for the fact that like the DM should be like, okay, like your stuff is ripped now.
Yeah.
And you need to buy new stuff, and you're like, I don't have any gold.
Right, but I have mending, which probably the spell component's 10 gold pieces.
It requires a small gem.
That has to be crushed at the end.
Exactly, up with 100 gold pieces.
Right.
But so I was playing this high level cleric, and I didn't know I had a flame strike. Wow. Yeah. That thing's awesome, right? I mean, so I had a good time, right? I mean, casting flame strike. I mean, so basically it's the cleric fireball, is my understanding, right?
Well, the column of flame, yep, absolutely.
Right. So
blast one person. Yeah, it's good stuff.
So it was, I think I killed a giant or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, you can do a lot of damn blade barrier, but those are at higher tiers because flame strikes.
I've moved beyond the 4 to 7. I can't remember what level I was.
You'd have to be 9th level if I recall.
That was pretty high level cleric, yeah.
So, but 4 to 7, your parties can endure a bunch of things. Mm-hmm. They have more capabilities. They typically have acquired some magic items, so they're not in this position of, not having resources. They have magic. Typically, everyone has 1 or 2 magic items, and they've acquired things. So their capabilities have expanded greatly.
Can we talk about magic items?
Yes.
Real quickly.
Because that's part of the tier. I mean, tier 1, you don't have anything, and finding a +1 sword is great.
I wanted to ask you about that. So 2 questions for you. Number 1, do you play magic items by the book where you don't tell the players what it is? And that can get hard because if you've got players if you're using THAC0, mm-hmm. right, in there, and you're letting them know, let's say, what the AC is to make things easy, then of course it doesn't get hard to figure out with a particular roll at some point that it's a +1 sword. So do you tell them or do you require them to use identify? And number 2, I'd like to know if you make a big deal out of, say, a +1 sword. So when I first started the Borderlands, I don't know if you remember this, because I know you came in a little bit later.
I did come in later.
When there was a magic item, I'd give out a little card that was laminated or something like that, which, if it was when it was a magical sword, it gave a little bit of the background, there's runes on it, and it was used in the, if it was identified, it was used in the, I tried it, it was a little bit like Lord of the Rings, where, it was a big deal that this magical, it wasn't just, I think a lot of times...
Generic +1
sword. It's a +1 sword, and that's all the player character cares about. It's got a little history. So I'd be interested on your take on those 2 things.
So what I would like to do versus what I do.
Yeah, which is a lot. That's an entire podcast, isn't it?
Yes.
Just that title.
That's right. What I'd like to do versus what I do. And that goes back to the type of play. I think typically the players that we play with, the tournament players, the people who are there, it's very hard because you have no history of it.
Right.
What made Sting interesting is the history in the world. If you don't have any history, it's like blah, 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 ruins, who cares, blah, blah, blah. So identify is the most horrible spell. I don't know if it's worse than push or not, but it's pretty bad because it doesn't tell you anything and it costs 100 gold pieces. And people want to do identify, and they're like, oh, this is a +5 coffee mug. Oh, no. You get to, there's a saving throw that magic user has to make, and there's a percentage chance of, and it would never tell the player. Never tells it's a +5 thing. It says it's a high plus or it's very powerful. And so in a perfect world, you would do it that way, and you'd have to keep track internally of when I use my +5 coffee mug that it would be +5.
Because that seems kind of cool to me, right? So this idea that you wouldn't know. I mean, I guess, and you pointed out it depends upon the kind of adventure you're going to have. So, it's. But
that's the history, right? The DMG. No one. I read you that penalty of death. Players should not be reading the Dungeon Master's guides.
Right.
That pay no attention behind the curtain, the whole DM screen, and not having, they should have imperfect knowledge because then they make imperfect decisions.
Right, you wouldn't know, you certainly wouldn't know the AC. I mean, I do a lot of stuff for convenience.
Right.
Everyone, if you're fighting a goblin, I might as well tell you their AC.
Right.
Half the players know it anyway. They know it better than the DM sometimes.
And they want to know when they roll the dice, what do I need to hit?
Right.
They don't just want to roll and go, look at you, did I hit? They want to know, hey, 17.
Right.
Or else, because then you get what my group gets, which I'll even tell them that. Did I hit? I told you, it's AC 6.
Yeah.
And then they're still trying to figure it out. And they're like, well, I rolled a 12. I'm like, you're 7th level. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure you hit.
It's not first level, right?
You know, and they got +8 to hit. So here's the compromise I do. I don't tell them anything about it unless they can spend some money and they'll get some items. They'll get things. I will tell them if it's a normal item, meaning a magic this or that. As soon as they go into combat with it, then I will let them know what it is, just so that they have no idea what it is. So at least there is a quote unquote challenge of, you know, they pick up this new sword, they think it's great, and they're fighting, and all of a sudden they find out it's a +1 sword and it's not as good as the +2 sword that they put down. I think you could do all that as if you play a low magic style of game. Like Lord of the Rings, we think is very, you know, this and that, but really, there's only a couple of magic items that are floating around the place. There's not a huge amount of magic, and even the magic users, right? I think you've mentioned a number of times, Gandalf's probably a 6th level magic user. He's not, you know. So, but if you're playing the traditional, if you go through here, you know, Dwellers of Forbidden City, and you just look and it's like, oh, okay, you find, you know, Incense of Meditation and Wand of Illumination. These kind of things, Wand of Magic Missiles. You know, if they hadn't, I will say, if they haven't heard the word to do it, you know, because again, it says you get these things that have a command word, they have to figure it out.
Wands are supposed to have a command word.
That's right. So if they have not heard, I will make it clear, but I'll say it one time. You know, you hear the person say blaze and explodes. Well, if they don't write it down.
Yeah, right. So how do you handle this when the player says, well, does my character remember it?
No, that's and I've gone back and forth on that, and I was listening to something today, and they're like, someone was doing a Q&A, and like, do you do that? And the answer is no, and I probably have done it both ways, but I tend to go, nope. Did you hear it? Yeah. Well, do you remember it? I don't know if you remember it.
Another one I get too, is I'm sure you've gotten as well, is does my player believe this person is telling the truth?
I don't know.
And my response is always like, well, what do you think?
Right. Unless they have a special ability to detect lie, then they don't. The only time I'll let them roll on things is if they're, you know, the character may have knowledge of the world that the player doesn't know because it's not their world.
Right.
So, you know, do I know what these ancient glyphs are? Okay, I'll let you roll that. But, you know,
you don't require your players to actually study up on themselves on their off time.
I don't have an alphabet, take the Lord of the Rings alphabet and make them practice it. But you know, that is true. If they don't write it down, and part of that is, hey, you know what? I put a lot of time into getting this thing ready. You could at least write the notes of this is Rufus the bartender. If you don't write down Rufus's name, you know, that's your problem. That's not my problem. Right. Do a better job of preparing. So mid-tier, the downside to mid-tier is, I don't think there really is. I prefer mid-tier is good. There's a lot of choices. It also allows, in some ways, there's more creativity and I think players feel like they have more options once they get past 4th level. In the beginning, they really have to leverage their spikes and their 10-foot poles and all these, you know, really rudimentary things to be successful. Here, once they get to that level, they can do things like, oh, I cast invisibility and I sneak around it. So some of the encounters that a module may have, you don't really know how they're going to get past it because the options for the characters increase, where they can have invisibility, they can charm people, or they can cast fog or a phantasm force. There's spells that are, and that's why, back to your point of, you know, kind of the especially in 1st edition pre-Unearthed Arcana, the power level of the fighter is very like this, and all of a sudden they catch up, the magic users catch up at that point. 3rd tier, which is where our group is in right now, it's that 8 to 12. They're going through the Giant series, and again, even though they're 5th, 6th, and 7th level, one of their magic users is 8th level. Most of the original characters are 7th level, and because they're specialized, as I said, they're basically 9th or 10th level. That's when you start getting into this very challenging. They feel very heroic because they can just mow through. They can mow through people, and you know they start acquiring very powerful items. They're involved, and part of the tier is also the type of adventure you can have. 1st level, Village of Hamlet, Keep of the Borderlands, Curse of the Reptile God. they're dealing with localized items. They're localized events. They're dealing with, there's a problem at the village of Hamlet. Go figure it out.
The Scooby-Doo
episode. Right? Yeah, they break down and they show up. Right. So, or Keep of the Borderlands. There's just Caves of Chaos. Go clean them out. Mid-tier, they start getting involved in regional areas. Like the Slaver series is about these slavers who are taking over an area, and if they're successful, they will save a region. Maybe not even be a whole kingdom. Look at the third tier, Giants. They're now dealing with kingdoms that are having issues, and they start interacting with kings and princes. So that third tier of they're again, they've acquired more spells. They can have multiple attacks. Again, those spells, you get to that 4th and 5th level. Now you've got Ice Storm, you've got Cone of Cold, you've got Charm Monster, you've got Conjure Elementals. I mean, you really start going from, but still the magic user, even though he or she's more powerful, you get a fighter on top of a magic user. If they don't win initiative, they're going to be dead in 2 rounds. So they typically, and in later editions, which I don't think is great, they start allowing for spells to be pre-casted on them so they can defend themselves, which I guess kind of makes sense. If you're a super powerful wizard, you would have all these protections. You wouldn't need bodyguards per se. They'd have these spells that, if I hit you, a contingency spell would go off. Like if I get hit, I can teleport.
It's like a little trap or something.
Right. Yeah. It's like basically like a programming language. If I'm under this hit point, to do this, or if I get hit by this. Right. So the advantages of the tier is players feel epic. They finally, they can, our guys, they fight 8 giants. They're like, whatever. It's annoying, but they have good armor class. Most of them are in the 0 to negative something. And then if they're a dwarf, they're -4. So, it's a good combat. They take some damage. Even if a giant hits them for 3 to 30 hit points, none of them are going to die because they all have at least 25 hit points. So death is rarer. I mean, we still have had player death. But the downside is, how do you keep the challenge up? Again, with 8 frost giants and 4 hill giants, it's basically a 5-minute fight.
And I can ask you, so you have how many player characters?
12.
So have you adjusted? So they're going, I mean, surely the G series is not built for that many players.
It's built for 9 characters.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's built for a whole, I mean, all of these are crazy. I mean, they expect these giant parties to be traversing through here. Because even if you look at the pre-gens, you're supposed to pick, if the tournament's played, the players should use the first 6 characters, but they have 19 or 20 characters.
There's a lawful evil character in here.
Yeah.
A neutral evil. You could play evil.
That's right.
Gygax. So maybe I've got a lot to learn because
that would be awesome.
I do, because I always assumed I always thought the conception was generally good versus evil. I understand you can be neutral, but so you've got evil characters going through.
Right.
That's interesting. Okay. So you would actually have to adjust it downward if you had fewer then.
Right. Well, it should say somewhere on here. I mean, usually it says, this thing's set, because back in the day when we played, we usually had multiple characters.
Oh, yeah, you can do that.
So, but it will say someone here, this thing is set for, but the Giants is 9 characters. It's up to 9 characters.
Oh, this is very cool. I never crossed my mind that in the Forbidden City, there would actually be
a city.
Yeah,
that's forbidden.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've never played that, so I may, if that's something, if you want to run that at some point, I've never played it or run it. If that's something you're interested in, I'd be happy to let you borrow it.
I appreciate that.
But I'd need your address and some deposit.
No, I'd be very, right. I have to take on an insurance policy.
Oh, no, it's okay.
D&D insurance.
It's only about $300 now. I'm just kidding. It's
well, you hear about these poor people who, their house burns down or something like that, and they lose all their D&D stuff.
Yeah,
they'll post that on Facebook. It's terrible.
That is terrible. But, so I haven't had adjusted. In fact, I've had to, I don't know how the original people would survive it. That's the part that, our players are kind of moaning about, boy, this is so hard. I'm like, you guys are mopping through it. Imagine if this wasn't your player.
This is so hard. What level are they again? They should be thrilled to be alive. They should retire.
but they don't want to retire. They're moving forward to save the world or something like that.
You know my plan. I want to play a half-orc cleric, and he's retiring after 4th level.
Well, guess what? You know what my character is in John's game?
What?
Fighter, cleric, half-orc female.
That's awesome.
That's right.
That's fantastic.
So,
because no one wants... Do you have a deity? Because I have a recommendation.
Well, go ahead. What's your recommendation?
I think it was like Luthien or something like that.
Oh, Luthien, the mother,
with the big long nails.
Yeah,
because she's a healer.
She is, but she's evil.
I know, but all of them. That's what. Yeah, yes, but she has neutral tendencies. Now we're going to get into this. Here we go. But if you get your DM to let you do it, have a cleric without, you should be lawful neutral. Because
I am lawful neutral.
Oh, I love that.
I'm lawful
kindred spirits.
That's right, lawful neutral. And I actually picked Horus because John said we could pick any deity that. Who's the Avenger god, and that's what I've. The backstory there is, I obviously went with the human parent, and then something terribly happened to the orc mother, and so now I'm looking for vengeance. Is the kind of thing. So.
You had an orc mother?
That's right.
This is I did a pre-gen for my convention, and it was a fighter, cleric, half orc. I think it's male. But yeah, I decided to switch it up because, I think I get a little tired of the story.
Right, the orcs
raped
rape or something happens there.
Right, so I had it where the dad was the human who was like a baddie and who actually joined the Luthians. I can't remember which tribe she is. She's one of those, the orc tribes. And he joined it because, he was that kind of guy. He's an assassin and, ended up marrying, the orc cook or something like that, female, and so wow, that's
so there you go. That's
what'd be cool? Would I think a half orc party?
It would be. Well, and that's where that's where these one shots are useful because you can make them all dwarves, you can make them the druid, the eco-terrorist,
all gnomes,
eco-terrorist, all gnomes.
Yeah, the eco-terrorist. That's what we talk about. That druid eco-terrorist.
I think that would be great.
Right, and then you could have half orcs.
Yeah,
a half orc party.
Yeah, it's very a Hobbit. Because you basically have all of the same creatures.
Well, that's right.
Instead of dwarves, you would do that.
I remember still back in the day, one day I rolled up like a bunch of dwarves because I wanted a group, like the Hobbit. And I remember bringing them in, and I can't remember if it was to Edward or whoever it was. I said, "Look what I did," and they just looked at me and they go, "Now what are you going to do with all of these?" And I was like, I don't know.
But I have them.
I remember that. I guess I have them.
I have them.
Just to have them. I rolled them all up.
I roll them up. They're great. What's wrong with that?
I mean, what was I doing spending my time rolling up like 13? Because it was 13 because of the unlucky number. Didn't they need Bilbo to be 14?
Right.
13. I spent my day rolling up 13.
And now with the internet, you press dwarves 13.
And
it just does it.
What a life.
Well, that's what we did. We did a lot of silly things. I mean, I'm sure we're not the only ones. I couldn't draw. I have no drawing artistic ability. I was in helping my friend who did drafting for his father, engineering. We went into AutoCAD and we built castles in AutoCAD like people use Minecraft. Yeah. And so I still have them on green and white paper. I'll show you some of the things we did. But we've completely segued. So what's great about Tier 4 is you can start really giving out epic items. Right. You can give out, you can tie them to the world, and you can set up these epic encounters that they eventually will be world-changing. And that sets up the 5th tier, or the 4th tier, which is the 10 to 14, or 11 to, it's anything below 14th or 15th level. This is high adventure. You look at Tomb of Horrors, you look at the Drow series, the Q1, Queen of Demon. They're all 10 to 14. And you're fighting literally deities. You have all liches, all these kind of really at the super high end there's really nothing you're not allowed to attack. And again, you have to be careful, but they have a lot of abilities. And I think this is where most DMs, and myself included, Dan, you don't have a whole lot of experience. And that's why I think you should run some one-shots with 10 to 14 so you can get that experience, because a lot of dungeon masters find that challenging to a point because if you design anything, you don't know all the capabilities. It's impossible to know all the capabilities. And if you have this adversarial relationship, which you shouldn't, you're constantly worried about, okay, well, how would they get out of this? And how would they get out of this? And, or this Lich should be able to protect themselves, but because of your ability as a dungeon master, you did not think of everything, and then it's something trivial, or at least perceived to be something trivial that the players do. But now you're changing worlds. You can go to different planes, which is you're at 10 to 14th level. You should be able to adjust reality or epic fights with huge battles. There's an arc, and typically the higher level you get, the less combat is focused on. Which is, if you want a campaign to end and you want a very high level, and you have players who like to fight, just get them to the epic levels, because eventually, I remember at playing high level that we maybe have one encounter a session, because most of the time you're looking at puzzles, you're looking at traps, you're negotiating with things, because you're just at a different plane. The gods don't fight each other because bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Big player characters don't fight each other, or evil players, because the stakes are too high. That's what they have minions for. That's why you have pawns who go off and do these things.
Your first level characters.
Right. You have your first through whatever. And some players don't like that. They want, they acquired all this magic and everything to wade through things. Well, most liches and these type of things are not going to go toe to toe with an adventure party. They're smarter than that.
Well, that's interesting, and I'd like to ask you a question about that, because my perception of levels 10 through 14 would be that as a DM, because you'd suggested that I run something at that level, is that it would be very difficult, because I had this perception that, I know how to handle an orc. It's quite easy. Orc has sword, spear, whatever, right? I can play an orc. But when you start hitting levels 10 through 14, I'm getting the perception that I've got players who have spells that are getting that I'm not as familiar with. They have tons, because they have a lot of them.
Right.
And I've got, if I've got a low level magic user, I know what spells he's got. I can read those in 10 minutes. Got a high level magic user, he's got a billion spells, everyone literally pretty much in the book, that I've got to be aware of. And then I've got monsters that are much more complicated. I have a lot more powers that I've got to be aware of. So I had the impression that it would be very challenging to run it. But it
would be.
Okay.
10 to 14 can be very challenging, because you're still there. And especially if the old school modules like Vault of the Drought, they've statted everyone out, and the missions are still get into the place and find out what's going on. So if once you pass the stealthy mode, you get into combat. There's a lot of capabilities. Once you get past what I call the epic tier, past 14th level, there's short of later past Unearthed Arcana, there are no epic modules that that are for you to purchase. I'm not aware of any of them pre-1985 that were above 14th level. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there were published ones, but they were not in the traditional iSeries. Q1 and S1, Two Maharas and Queen of the Demon Web Pips are the two highest level modules that I think you can buy. They're 10 to 14.
They're 10 to 14?
So, but look at Two Maharas. Two Maharas, there's like 6 encounters. I'm probably minimizing it, of actual fighting. And none of the fighting is rather
It's all
complicated.
traps.
It's all traps. It's all trying to figure out things. Queen of the Demon Web Pips, there is fighting in it, but most of it's adventuring. You're trying to figure things out, and you're trying not to be... You're trying not to be caught, because you're in the abyss. Horrible things could happen. So, and the combat seems to be either overpowered or underpowered.
Can I ask you a question about
Sure.
Vault of the Drow?
Mm-hmm.
I see down here it says Gen Con 11 tournament module.
Right.
This seems long.
It is. It's crazy.
How in the world can you run? I mean, a tournament module, it seems to me, would need just a few rooms.
Right.
I mean, is it...
I don't know. I never understood that. I mean, it's great that these, for people who, I think they write the module and then they figure out the scoring later. That's the only thing I can think of with that.
Oh, this is where, maybe I should mention or show it, because I don't want to give anything away. Though I guess at this point, there's not a lot of people out there that are going to be Vault of the Drow spoilers, like surprise them. But that's where...
That's right. The deep nose. Sniffer for
the deep nose.
But, if you look through this module... there's a lot of stats for combat and fighting, but if you assault the vault, the city, there's 8,000 drow living there. it's going to go horribly wrong.
Even with my sleep spell?
Yes.
Oh wait, are drow like other elves? Are they immune to sleep? Are they 90%? Is it 90% resistant or is it immune?
They have magic resistance and then they're immune to sleep.
They're immune to sleep, but they have 90% magic resistance.
Yes, and typically they're over 2 hit dice, so that would be.
Drow are the same way.
Yeah, so there's a lot of problems with that.
Yeah. Okay.
But so I think the other problem is with when you get to the higher tier, which is why there's less encounters, is because people don't want to waste their time. There's some encounters in here where they fight, 10 second level drow. Your party's going to win. I don't even know why you're wasting time.
Right, that's just boring. No, that's like having 10 orcs when you're at 8th level.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just...
Unless the DM's going to be super creative and use the environment to figure out, they throw nets or something.
Yeah, like Tucker's Kobolds kind of thing where they're, right. Yeah.
Really subterfuge. It's really hard. So typically... and that's where I think tier 5, that's or tier 4, the high level, just before super epic, makes a lot of sense to end the campaign. You save the world from, in this case, Loth invading. If it's Q1, you defeat her. And again, I will never run Q1 because it doesn't make any sense that you would actually fight Loth in her plane and win.
Wait, what do you mean? You've got to finish it off. You've gone that far.
No, it's
you got to do.
Q1 is.
There's no Q2, right?
There is no Q2.
Was there supposed to be? Why do they call it Q1? You've got to do that.
That's the culmination.
You're not going to do that. But you're doing a Vault of the Drow?
Yeah.
Where are they at now? They're in the Giants, right?
They're in the Giants right now.
So you would have to do D1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
And that's your plan. Well, maybe I shouldn't give anything away.
It'll be a modified version of it.
The Drow's out of the bag, isn't it, at this point?
Oh, they know they're going to go down there at some point. It's just... Well, the problem with Q1 is there would be no way this 10 to 14 party would be able to kill Loth.
Why don't you let them decide?
Well, I would decide for them. They'll go there and they'll die horribly.
No,
They will die.
Let them decide. No? All right.
Well, they may. I mean, I'm not going to say no. I'm just saying if they go, I'll let them know going to an abyssal plane. But, this is the other issue. There's a lot of work in this because all the spells work differently. And it's a huge work. And some of it they have, again, not to get the super spoilers, there's just some steampunk almost merges with this. So I don't know.
Is that right?
And actually in this one, D3, again, more spoiler alerts, which makes a lot more sense. You get to fight her in this plane.
Then that sounds bad because she probably has a lot of power. Wait, in this plane, your plane, not her plane. Right.
Yeah, if you do something, and that's what that would be the version of this.
Can I ask you about the G series? I've been through it apparently. Edward tells me I went through it. Is it? I know it's iconic. Is it how good is it? So, you hear so much about the G series. Is it just because you think that its reputation is built on the fact that everyone remembers it and there's a lot of nostalgia built up around it? Or do you find it as you're running it that, that's a good adventure?
Yeah, I like them. First thing I like about them, they're short. Each one's about 8 or 9 pages.
Nice. Yeah.
They have about 30 or 40 rooms, 20 on 1 or 2 levels, the first 2. And even the Fire Giant one has about 40 rooms. It's in more levels. So there's not a lot of levels. You can make it as challenging as you want it to be. You can be, I'm going to be merciful and not have all the giants attack. Or you can, if you have a very sophisticated party and they just kind of stroll in, you could have 30 giants attack them, and that would be problematic for most parties to deal with. So I like it. It's very easy to run because at least the first 2, G1, G2, there's not a lot of magic users. Enemy magic users. So you don't have to know what they're going to do. They're pretty straightforward. Giant, attack.
Nice. Yeah.
And players can use their abilities to get around. They can use invisibility, but yet there's still a chance for the giants to see them because, as they get tiered up, there's a lot of giant slayer swords and these type of things, again, gives them an opportunity to be epic, right? The idea of the match, one of the players hitting a giant and doing, killing him in one shot. That's always, people love that kind of that capability. So I think they're great from that perspective. The first one was good. The second one I like as well. It just, so it's once you, like any pre-module, I don't take them verbatim. I kind of adjust them. So I will say there's definitely in the campaign, I will have to give them some chance to rest and heal up and get a level, because if they don't level up, the difficulty increases dramatically between each of them. So the first G1, spoiler alert, the big challenge is avoiding stirring the hornet's nest. Mm-hmm. You want to kind of take out a bunch of people and draw people, because there's a big party. There's a celebration in the main hall, and there's like 30 giants in there. Mm-hmm. So you walk in there, and there's 30 giants. Say goodnight. That's a bad deal with bears and ogres and all.
Can't you pretend you're the help or something? Here,
unless
delivering.
Unless you're an orc slave, unless you're orcs, then and I don't think putting the orc apron is going to work.
My old trick.
Yeah, that's not going to work. You're all kind of short for an orc kind of thing.
But look at my apron.
That's right. Oh yes, you totally get past. So, if they kind of systematically, the module kind of lends itself to. There's a big party, everyone's out there, there's a handful of people around, handful of giants around. You pick them all off, and then you slowly, beat them down, and you're in much better shape. Or you can have one of your player characters go invisible into the main hall, get detected by the bear, and stir up the hornet's nest. Mm-hmm. That's what happened with that group.
Yeah.
And
so they tried. They were trying.
Right.
And that is unfortunate. Don't you hate it when you're DM where the party is seeming to do what seems like the right thing? They're being creative, but it just doesn't go well.
Well, that's for another topic. I'll let the players who are in there. The frost giant is even harder because there's a number of creatures that are very deadly. There's 2 white dragons. There's a whole bunch of things in there.
Is there a whore fox?
A whore fox?
Isn't that in the Fiend Folio? Where's Fiend Folio?
Oh, here you go.
I don't know. Isn't that some snowbound?
No, I didn't see that.
I don't know.
There's ice toads. There's anything cold, except I don't think there's a whole lot from the Fiend Folio.
I probably just made this thing up. So
I just
picked a random.
That was a British thing too. So, and obviously the giants are more powerful, and you start seeing other things. G3 is definitely a scale up because now you get more drow.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's
adorable, isn't he?
It is a whore. What a whore. Fox.
Inhabitants of cold regions.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
He's not in there.
Oh, you know what? Okay, so your Fiend Folio.
That's not my Fiend Folio. That was an extra Fiend Folio. That's one I was going to give away. But you think I should try to contact?
We need to contact. So we need to make this our segment.
That's right.
So Blaine, if anyone knows, Blaine McGuire.
Guire.
Yep. Blaine McGuire.
Who at the time lived in North Ride, California. We're not going to give out his address.
Why wouldn't we?
Because someone may murder the person. We don't know the people listening to this thing. Okay,
so if you know or are Blaine McGuire.
That's right. Put a comment in, and we will send you your Fiend Folio back.
From what are the odds that he's still... Okay, from North Ride...
Well,
Colorado.
Is it Colorado or California?
Oh, yeah, it's Colorado. Well, let's Google this.
Is it CA is California?
Oh, I thought that was a CO period.
Oh, maybe.
No, you're probably right. It's probably... Well, let's find out. You're probably right.
Anyhow, so if you're Blaine, and we've talked about this, somehow setting up kind of a... like when there's a disaster and they have a poster board of, have you seen this person?
Right.
Letting people get their books back. Because I have my original player's handbook.
You're right. No, that says North Ridge. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
But my Dungeon Master's Guide and I have my original Monster Manual and my original player's handbook. But my Monster Manual, my DMG is not original. And that would be, that book, I remember reading it like a Holy Scripture, and it would be great to have that back. So
I think it's possible that Blaine was confused as to where he lived.
Right.
I'm not finding a North Ride. I'm finding a Northridge, California is coming up a lot.
Okay, so it's probably Northridge. He didn't spell it right. I'm sure if you put his address in, you could figure it out as well. But
good point. I'll do that as well.
So, which we won't say on the thing, just in case someone is looking to murder Oh, I was looking for Blaine for years and finally found where he
Ha
lives.
ha! I was so fortunate to be listening to the GROGTALK.
And they have revealed my nemesis's location.
I'm still angry. He killed my gnome. He was a mean DM.
That's right. He was terrible with that whore fox. That fox is full of whores. So.
Yes. Well, I can't even, you know what? We can't even give out the street. Do you know what that says? Don't even say it, but no.
Yeah, I don't know. He was obviously a confused child.
You know what? All right. Well, I'm also, while we're doing this, I'm going to Google his name.
Yeah, I'm sure he probably has an alert. He's probably a Secret Service agent, and anyone who searches his name, the Black Ops will
It probably is true. He probably does work for the CIA now.
Yeah. So anyway, so we talked about that, and actually we don't have to get into the styles of play because we already had an hour and a half. I think what I will say about these tiers is if you haven't experienced them, because if you're in a traditional game where you start first level, you go through it, and then the campaign peters out because people are leaving. Did you find him?
I found some Blaine McGuire's.
Okay.
I mean, they're, just more than...
He would probably look like us.
Actually, you know what? There's not that many Blaine McGuire. Okay, there's one guy in Ireland. I don't think it's him probably, but it could be.
He would really be confused, so...
Look, there's a Blaine McGuire. Look, I think people who play D&D are smart people. They tend to be. So this guy is a senior systems engineer. Mm-hmm. Oh, look. He's in the greater San Diego area.
Yeah, maybe that is in San Diego.
Right?
Yeah.
He's at... Oh, look at... He looks kind of...
Yeah, he's about...
He's 8, don't you think? Experience. I think he was at Biosite for 12 years. Oh, look, he's IT specialist.
Yeah, 95, so he's...
Oh, production chemist. He sounds smart.
Yeah, 20s.
In 95.
So he's 20...
He went to UC San Diego in 1990.
Yeah. So
I think this is... You know what I should do?
Why would he play the first edition? Maybe he would. He just started with first edition. Yeah, that would
wait, no, he was, because he went to college. He's just like me.
Yeah, 1990.
I went to college in 86.
Right, he's a few years younger than us.
And right, so I think he still would have been playing, so if he was playing in high school in the late 80s, that's still first edition, isn't it?
Wait a minute, hold on. All right, I just heard the last person drop out. Because they're like, no one cares about Blaine. But we're going to find who
I'm going to know. He's on LinkedIn. Are you on LinkedIn?
I am.
So you can contact him.
Of course. Why is this more work? Why didn't I just scratch this out? Hold on.
Dan's been replaced. Where's Dan? What happened to Dan?
I like how it's more work for me.
No, you need to contact Blaine McGuire.
Yes.
And say, Blaine, I think I have your Fiend Folio.
And he's like, don't ever mention the Dungeons and Dragons to me again. But
I don't play. I don't know who you are. Leave me alone.
That's right.
No, we need to contact Blaine McGuire.
Okay.
And ask him if this is, if this is his Fiend Folio.
Well, I would say, of course, it's his Fiend Folio. He wrote it. Who else would write it?
He bought this at KB Toys.
Yeah.
That's KB Toys, right?
Yeah.
The toy store. That's the original one then, because KB is not going to be selling a Fiend Folio. That's awesome.
Anymore, yeah.
That's the original. He bought it at KB Toys.
But here's the thing. I may have bought it from him. I don't remember. He may have sold it to me. He may be like, why are you contacting me? I sold you this.
No, it's all sales are final. I told you that, James. All sales. No. You were confused. No, I don't want my money back.
I don't want it back.
Oh, you just recently bought this off of the eBay?
Yes, off the eBay. And I'll have to check if I have other ones with his name on it. I don't think so.
Well, you can check your search history. You can check your order history.
Yes, I can. See, because I wanted to fill out my thing. Though. See,
now, that would not be a very exciting reunion if you were just calling the guy you bought it from 2 months ago on eBay.
Yeah, he's
That's less interesting.
So like this old book. They redid
the thing. You just check it out, and you can see. No, you didn't buy it from Blaine. You bought it from whatever Wayne's something. What do you think?
I'll have to look because I bought a few books with there because I was missing some of the core books. So instead of buying them individually, I bought lots of them.
Well, this needs to be. We said that we were going to try to reunite.
I am going to try to. Yes, this one I will try to reunite.
Thank you. All right.
I will work. That'll be tirelessly. Now that I've done my taxes, this will be my next.
Well, listen. If I can write letters to people who wrote. Have I given you an update on that?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I've got this friend Joe in Philadelphia who's looking for this adventure.
Who I've met. He's a very.
No, I'm sorry. It's a different Joe.
Oh, you have
seriously.
2 Joes from Philadelphia?
2 Joes from Philadelphia.
Wow, okay.
And he's
Sorry, first Joe. This is Joe number 2.
Right. He's looking for this adventure, You Bet Your Life, ellipsis, again. It's the sequel, of course, to You Bet Your Life. And these adventures run at this convention, I think, in Detroit, back in the 80s, or late 70s, I think. And so we wrote this, he called him up. We found the address of the guy, the phone number, and called him up, and he hangs up on my friend Joe. Joe says, hey, are you the guy who wrote You Bet Your Life? And he just hangs up on him. Yeah. So what we did then is I found an advertisement, an order form for the adventure from the late 70s or something. And so we had his address in Tampa. So I filled it out, and I put in a check for $3.50, which is what the price was. And I sent it off, and I heard nothing. Well, I'm sitting at my office the other day, and my cell phone rings. It's the guy who wrote the adventure. Right. And he says, hey, yeah, I was going through my basement, I found it. And I said, well, listen, the person you really want to talk to is my friend Joe in Philadelphia. He'd be thrilled. And he says, okay, well, I have a landline, and I didn't have Joe's number with me. I'll call you at 7 p.m. Friday night. I said, great. Well, you can figure, the 7 o'clock comes, 7 o'clock passes, don't hear anything. I call the guy's landline, it just keeps ringing. That's where we're at.
Wow.
It was worth the wait, wasn't it?
So someone actually called and you said, I'm going to make this harder for you for your $3.50, I said. Well, you should have just said, yeah, send it to me.
No, I did say that too. I said, yeah, I want it, probably. I think I said that too.
And then you could have sent it to your friend.
He didn't say, exactly. No, but I said you can send it to me.
You know what this thing you could do for people is go write cease and desist or letters, stop calling me, stop harassing me about this thing.
People like me. Right. To send cease and desist letters to people like myself.
Right, exactly. You could, I have a service because apparently I'm not the only one who's asking for 40-year-old modules. Here, you can send this in response.
Right.
I think that's a service you
could sell that. Right.
And Blaine McGuire is going to need that.
For people, for people unlike us who are embarrassed about, they're trying to get away from their playing days. They don't want it to be brought up. They don't want their wives knowing that they did this. All right.
Well, maybe it's not that way, but
or we could call them up and be like, "We'll stop calling you if you give us some money." No, wait, don't do that. I think that might be illegal.
I think that's illegal.
Don't do that.
I think especially
if you hire me, I will send a cease and desist letter to me and get me to stop calling
you. Allow you to stop calling. Yeah, okay. I don't think that's a good thing. But no, don't do that. It was interesting that at least he reached out.
He said, and you know what he said? Well, I think I told you this. He said that he was interested in coming to Crucible 8 and running You Bet Your Life Again.
He may have died, though.
That's terrible.
Well,
there is a high mortality rate for this generation.
Well, I mean, they're getting older.
They are getting older.
I mean, the fact he's lived in the same house for 40 years.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's...
No, I don't know if he's lived there. We just found his current address. I don't know that he's lived there for 40 years.
I thought you went to the old magazine and filled out and put the same address.
No.
Okay, that's where I
updated the address. No, I sent it to the...
Well, maybe he reconsidered the fact that you looked up his new address and he thought he was going to do something nice and he realized, oh my goodness, these people are stalking me.
Yeah.
And now I'm terrified. He's probably hiding in his closet right now, scared that...
I was hoping he'd find it funny that a check arrives for $3.50 in this order form from the late 70s.
I'm sure he found it funny until the terror reached.
There's a fine line, yeah.
When he started researching and said...
And he sort of thought about this.
Right.
First he's like, yeah, this is funny. Wait, this is disturbing.
It's disturbing. This is not the... hitchhiking was a big thing in the 70s. Yeah. Do you see people doing that anymore? No, because they're worried about being murdered on the side of the road.
On both sides.
Exactly.
Right? So the driver's worried about being murdered, the hitchhiker's worried about being murdered.
People get Uber now. So
well, and that's dangerous.
I didn't say I would recommend that, but that is... At least you know the killer who's getting you, and the person. You have to at least log in before you get murdered. So anyway,
okay.
I'm sorry. We totally digress. So I think, as far as tiers of play, I think everyone... If you haven't had that chance, and it's very rare to go either create modules or go online, Adventure Lookup, that's a site where you can put high levels in there, download the modules, do a one-shot so you can get experience with it. And then you can decide if that's the type of play that you'd like. And I think it doesn't have to be this big combat fest. It could be, I know you're trying to steer towards more role-playing. I think you could have that opportunity if you had pre-gen characters, higher level where they have to use their wits to figure out, as opposed to, you know, almost like a Tomb of Horrors thing, but not so deadly, where there's not going to be a whole lot of encounters, combat encounters, but there's going to be more of interplay and role playing. So I think that's an opportunity we all should take.
And one thing, a couple things real quick to mention is that some of the lower level adventures, I don't know if this has been your experience with a higher level adventure, some of the lower level adventures are really not appropriate oftentimes for the levels it indicates. So it indicates 1 to 3.
Right.
And
well, they have a white, right? And
there's a white.
The infamous, right? You read it.
Keeping the Borderlands, and that's Gygax.
Yeah, they have a white. They have a Medusa.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And when I read Chapel of Silence, which I think is a great module, but it had it's low level, 1 to 3, I think, and it has a vampire.
I think I give that one a little bit of a pass, only because that was original D&D, and maybe vampires.
Or a basic. I think Holmes basic.
Oh, it's Holmes basic.
But I think the vampires less.
Yeah, they're not as
fleshed out.
They're not as fleshed out. And a first edition vampire in a first level game, it's game over.
And one of the difficulties too is some of the old Judges Guild modules, which are well known, like Caverns of Thracia, Teagle Manor, don't actually identify levels,
right?
Which makes it tough. And it really is, the deeper you go, the harder it gets. So I guess the concept perhaps is head on out, level up, maybe go back in. But that's hard because you don't even know what level to start the thing at, because they don't, back in the day, right? I think that was not all that unusual. Particularly
as long as people understood the rules, and I think if you go back to the original D&D, I think Gary's instruction was, make 6 levels of dungeon. And the idea was the lower level you're in, the monsters should be appropriate. And that first level characters go on first level dungeon, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So as long as people understood that's the language that you're going into, so that and that's where a lot of this makes sense of when you're doing the random dungeon generation, where you fell down a trap, you'd go down 2 levels. Now all of a sudden you realize, oh crap, I've gone, not only have I been hurt while falling 20 feet, which by the way should be 3d6 now, not 2d6.
Right.
But I'm on level 3 now. That means I could be fighting 3rd level monsters here. That's the scary part.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I know that's very old school. It reminds me a little bit of video games, though, right? I'm on level 2. The monsters are get harder. So I'm a big fan of this sort of where the dungeon makes sense, and that, I don't know, some of that to me. I mean, you could come up with a reason why that makes sense.
Who are you? Who are you?
I'm becoming more discerning.
Wow.
Okay. I know, right? The nostalgia is wearing off, and now, this blind faith and all that was old is wearing off, and I think I'm becoming more discerning. So, as a matter of...
What are we going to just call ourselves? Woke talk? Or we're going to be... Because GROGTALK is about old, the way it used to be. So if you're going to evolve from that, which is fine.
It's like my alignment's changing.
That's right. There's a penalty.
There is a penalty. Well, I lose a level, I think, don't I?
You lose a level, and you have to do atonement.
And I immediately forget the language.
Right,
which is not much of a language, as you've pointed out. It's just a few words or something.
But you would not be able to... I don't think you could speak Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. You'd be... I don't know what you'd be at that point.
I know, that would be weird. I don't know.
Well, you're talking about Call of Cthulhu, which again, that's an old school game. So you're okay as, that's kind of... Well, that would be a slight shift in alignment. It's not like you're being radical shift. You're still in the...
Tendencies?
Yeah, we have some tendencies, but you're still, that's a deadly game, and it's old school. It's still...
What's interesting about it is that old school, I think, has many subgenres. We're talking about subgenre, right? Of heavy metal, right? So you've got some old adventures, and I guess at some point, I don't know, maybe someone has done it, is sort of analyze the different styles of old school through the different eras. Because, some of those old Judges Guild or the adventures that I was running for, like the Judges Guild Journal or the Dungeoneer from the 70s, were real sort of, in many ways, looked very Monty Python-ish. I mean, I had to literally cross out zeros on the treasure.
Monty Hall, not Monty Python.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Monty Python. Sorry. Monty Hall, not Monty Python. Well, from my side, oftentimes I thought it was very funny.
Yeah.
Right? But the players didn't think it was so Monty Python, Monty Hall. And it was just sort of, large amounts of treasure, I think +3 swords on low-level adventures and all that. And then it started, I think, changing. And so old school, there's old school and then there's old school, I think, right?
I think so. And again, I don't, for me, old school starts with Moldvay Basic and first edition. And again, like a lot of people, why would I play basic when I could play advanced? advanced sounded so much more sophisticated.
Right.
And
Who wants to be basic?
Right. Why would I want to play it? I'm not a simpleton. I can figure out.
I'm cool. I play advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
I'm no nerd. I'm no noob.
Please.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna get lots of dates, right? I want,
right. Right, and so the modules, because you came from a board game perspective, it took a while to really figure out. I don't know how long it took in real time, but you bought modules and you played them. So the modules, at least at that point, the published modules they may have felt insane as far as, why is there a frost giant next to a, fire giant versus, here's an orc and the next room is a troll. The ecology may have not made a whole lot of sense, but the treasure was commensurate to it. Like Keep of the Borderlands, even though that's a basic game, a basic module, the best thing you found in there was a +2 sword, which is still it's a great thing, but it wasn't super ridiculous. And when you got done with it, your characters were 3rd level, which is what you would expect if you spent that time. And most of the modules are like that. You didn't have these ridiculous jumps in treasure or money. They're in the Giants, they're probably going to get 100,000 experience points, or maybe 200,000 experience points, but not individually. That's the whole group. Well, when you're 8th or 9th level, you need 40 or 50,000 to go up. So, it's about half a level or a level for some of them. So, any more on this? Because I think, we're at probably at a good stopping point as far as talking about it. We talked about tiers of play, and, each one has an advantage or disadvantage depending on, I think the higher up you go, the dungeon master definitely needs to understand the game more and not be frustrated if the players come up with an idea that either the module you didn't consider, because again, that's part of it. This is not, at least I'm trying to continue to press it. Here's the world. The whole point is, here's the world. Let the players try to figure out. They're part of the game. That's what makes the adventure or the game interesting, is what they're going to do based on the scenarios that you provide. Not, here's my trap and there's the only way. And that's where I think it gets challenging, is you look at some of these modules, especially high team, like this can only be defeated by this spell or this spell or this spell. Well, what happens if they came up with something creative? Are you just going to say, nope, because the module said you can only be defeated by a wish or whatever? What happens if they put the object in a bag of holding and then broke the bag of holding? Would that disappear, or would it just pop up again? I think those are, you should reward, like you said, reward creative things. And I think as long as you're malleable to that, the higher tiers can be a lot of fun as well, especially if you want to move away from room fight. You can get to more role playing and this and that. So, any final thoughts on that, Dan?
No final thoughts.
All right. So let's talk about our suggestion of the week. And Dan, you had a suggestion based on what we were talking about.
Yeah, and I was happy to grab that Dragon magazine because
it's like a grab bag.
I was struggling. It is like a grab bag. Yeah, and I just happened to pull Dragon magazine number 78 out and found that Citadel by the Sea was in there. So I'm going to recommend the Citadel by the Sea adventure. I think Citadel by the Sea is considered one of the best Dragon magazine adventures. And
from that era, I can't speak
from that era, right? When I did research on the best adventures from Dragon magazine from that era, Citadel by the Sea came up as a fan favorite oftentimes. So what's nice about Citadel by the Sea is that it is it's short. So I think you could run it in a single session. I mean, you need to keep things moving along.
It's probably 2 sessions, because I think getting to the Citadel, and there's some challenges in the top level that players, because they're low level, may take them a while to get through that. It's pretty deadly, the first part.
It is a deadly adventure. So that's the one thing, is that it works well as a one-off, because that way, if there's death, I think we lost at least one. You guys lost at least one character in there. I can't remember if it was more.
I think one of them died from the spider. Wasn't there a spider?
Oh, yes, Lane died from the spider. Oh, and then somebody, a trap. Remember, there was a fear or something. They went running up the stairs in the trap, and they died.
Was that there, the ballista? Okay, yeah.
That's right. So yeah, no, it's pretty deadly, but it's an entertaining adventure. It's got a clear objective. If the DM runs it, I think the way they're supposed to run it, there is time constraints.
Yep.
So it's fun as a one-off because the party really shouldn't be exiting the dungeon and going back in. It sort of defeats the purpose with the time constraints. But so yeah, if you're looking for a one-off, that low level, not too complicated, a lot of fun, I recommend Citadel by the Sea from Dragon Magazine, number 78.
Yeah, I guess the only other part I would add to that, and I hope they fail their save on that, because it's a great module, both as a players and DM. It would probably be not my... If this was the first time you were playing first edition Dungeons & Dragons and you hadn't played D&D before, I would not make that the first module, because with the time constraints and some of it, it requires players who've played together, because it's a harder module.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what you're doing, death can come pretty quick. Whereas, you know, that's why Right, Wrong, or Indifferent, Keep Along Borderlands, Village of Hamlet, some of these other ones, you can ease into it. You can get a couple encounters and start figuring out the game. If you're trying to figure out the game on this, it could be problematic.
Oh, I agree. And it's level 1 to 3, so it probably isn't good as a first adventure.
It's the first adventure for a party who's starting a new campaign, who's played before. Is what I think it would be good for.
Sure, right. Or you can do it, of course, as right. You can do
a
one-off with the appearance players, maybe a little bit higher than first level as well.
If you're restarting a campaign, this would be a great. You're starting a new campaign, and people have played before, or they're experienced players. That would be a great module to do, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're going to run it the way it was meant, which is the time constraints, and there's things that once you get into the dungeon, if you don't keep making progress, your party is eventually going to may just die because there's environmental effects.
I think it would be fun to also locate some of the people who wrote some of the adventures. Sid Fisher. So where's Sid Fisher? Sid Fisher, author of Citadel by the Sea. It'd be great.
I hope he's with us, though.
That's terrible. Sid Fisher should call the Grog Line.
That's right.
One of these days, and we can interview Sid about.
I would like that.
Mr. Fisher about Citadel by the Sea.
Maybe he knows Mr. McGuire as well.
Maybe they're in the same group.
They may be in the San Diego area.
That's right. Or maybe he ran that as part of that group.
Absolutely.
And that's when he sold it.
That's right.
I'm out of here.
Yeah. This what 78 was what 81.
There's a lot of traps in this.
What year was this? It's in the same time. Yeah, December. October 83. Oh, yeah. This
is 81.
36 years. Yeah, assuming he's in his mid-20s or early 30s. Yeah, he's probably still with us, unless he had a terrible accident or something.
So what would be your recommendation?
So my suggestion, actually, and this is something I'm going to announce here, is that I know you've started up a one-shot, so the rumors of your demise were greatly exaggerated. So preparing for GROGTALK, I am about to publish a meetup to play Paranoia. And first edition Paranoia, so I've read the rules again, and there's multiple iterations of Paranoia, but you know, if you're having DM burnout or your players want to try something and not have, you know, the great thing about a one-shot is you don't have this attachment to the character, and you can be a little more bold, you can do things. Well, Paranoia takes that to the 10th level, to the extreme. And so first edition Paranoia, people think second edition Paranoia, either one, first or second, which still have that dark humor, kind of zany. You don't have to make it super zany, but it's this dystopian world where a computer has taken over, and you're poor, basically adventurers in the service of the computer trying to make sense of the world, and there's really no good way to do that. It's a lot of fun. Have you played Paranoia?
Oh yeah, we played. Yeah. Okay. You get a certain amount of lives.
You get a certain amount of lives. Yeah, death will happen, and the whole point is to enjoy the farceness of it. So I read the rules recently. So I've printed some of the material. I got some of the material, and so I'll be setting up a one-shot very soon to do that. So the computer will be looking for this his you know, from a gender perspective. It's 6 best troubleshooters to help with an adventure that I'm going to write for it too.
That's great.
Because of the thing you talked about. It's, you know, you don't need some of these adventures. These are so long. You won't be able to finish. I want to do a one-shot.
Right.
I wanted to do it, get everyone set up, play it, done. With the understanding of probably doing a version of that at GROGTALK. GrogTalk, excuse me.
All right, so many grogs.
There are a lot of grog. I'm grogged out. So it's a nice change of pace, and it's part of the history of this. And as we I see us doing a few more sessions on AD&D, but we want to talk about the other games that we intend to run at GrogCon. So I want to talk about Paranoia. So obviously that's an area that I've spent some time in. You're looking at Call of Cthulhu, so that would be really great because I know very little about Call of Cthulhu. So that would be one that you kind of run and from a episode, and I would do Paranoia, and we'd have to pick a couple other games because we want to expose these when we promote that.
I'm thinking of Thieves Guild too, because I own Thieves Guild, which was, I know you're not that familiar with it. Yeah, it was a game back in the day, which obviously all thieves.
I think that would be cool.
Yeah. So.
All right, well, very good. So those are our suggestions, and so we're looking forward to GrogCon at Crucible, which is still in the October timeframe. We're hoping to post some games. We were talking before we started about, so that's why please comment or subscribe. If you're listening to this, we really would appreciate you putting feedback on iTunes or Google Play. If you're listening on YouTube, like and subscribe. We really enjoy doing this, and it's not really for a purpose of seeing numbers, but it certainly helps knowing that people are exactly.
It's a good thing.
But we are seeing slow growth, and at this
investment portfolio.
At this pace, I would say by the year 2047 we would have 1,000 subscribers.
Well, that's all. Yeah. Oh, and do you have some percentile dice there handy?
Yes.
I'd like to roll to see how this podcast was, like how good it was.
Oh, you're just going to
I like to see. No, the dice don't lie.
Right.
And just to get a sense before we sign off.
Here you go.
Thank you very much.
What's the table?
High. So high is good.
Oh, it's like a reaction.
It's just a percentage. Yeah, it's just right. Okay, so 100 means this is just how good of a podcast.
And this is you rolling.
Exactly.
Okay.
But it's not my dice.
True.
It's not my terrible white dice. Look
96.
At that. This is the awesome podcast.
Awesome. Amazing.
Wow, people are so fortunate to be listening to this.
That I have to check who has, but I think there's so that to me is helping us out. That would be, again, we don't do this for fame or notoriety. It was just we really enjoy both old school gaming and would love to hear what people and how we can help people play. I mean, that's. Again, thanks to Dan and Ed's efforts, we have a number of people playing who wouldn't be playing right now. So we want to encourage folks to do that too. So I'm James.
I'm Dan.
Signing off, and we'll see you next week on GROGTALK.